The morning shift alarm echoed through the corridors of Galactic Council Station Harmony, a massive structure floating in the neutral space between star systems. Marcus Reed walked through the gleaming hallways, his coffee mug in hand, expecting another routine day of diplomatic paperwork and trade negotiations. Marcus had been serving as Earth's junior ambassador for 3 years now. He handled minor disputes, cultural exchanges, and the endless stream of requests from various alien species who wanted to establish better relations with humanity. Most days were predictable. Today would be different. The communication console in his office was already blinking with an urgent message when he arrived. The sender made him pause mid-sip of his coffee. The message came from the Vorthik Empire, one of the most feared predator species in the galaxy. The Vorthak were legends among spacefaring civilizations. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, covered in dark scales, and possessing razor-sharp claws that could slice through metal, they were apex predators from a harsh desert world called Vorthik Prime. Their empire spanned 12 star systems, and they had never been defeated in battle. What made them truly terrifying was not just their physical prowess, but their intelligence. They were strategic thinkers, master warriors, and completely ruthless when protecting their territory. More importantly, the Vorthik had never shown interest in diplomatic relations with any species. They preferred isolation and dealt with problems through force. For them to contact the human embassy was unprecedented. Marcus opened the message with careful attention. The text was brief and formal, written in perfect standard galactic. Ambassador Thane Bloodclaw of the Vorthik Empire requested an immediate private meeting to discuss a matter of extreme importance to both species. Within an hour, Marcus found himself in Conference Room 7, one of the station's most secure meeting spaces. The room was large and bare, designed to accommodate species of different sizes and environmental needs. When the door slid open, Marcus got his first look at a living Vorthik. Thane Bloodclaw was everything the stories described and more. His dark green scales caught the light as he moved, and his yellow eyes seemed to analyze every detail of Marcus's appearance and behavior. Despite his intimidating presence, he wore the formal diplomatic robes required for council station meetings. The contrast was striking. A creature designed for hunting and killing, dressed for peaceful negotiation. Ambassador Reed. Thane's voice was deep and controlled, with only a slight accent. "Thank you for meeting with me on such short notice." Marcus gestured to the conference table. "Of course, Ambassador Bloodclaw. How can humanity assist the Vorthik Empire?" Thane settled into his chair, which had been specially reinforced for his weight and size. For a moment, he seemed to struggle with how to begin. This was unusual behavior for a species known for direct communication. "What I am about to discuss with you has never been proposed by my people before. It goes against thousands of years of Vorthik tradition and law." Thane paused, his clawed fingers drumming against the table surface. "We need your help with our children." Marcus blinked in surprise. Of all the possible requests he had imagined, this was not one of them. The Vorthik were notoriously protective of their young. No outsider had ever seen a Vorthik child, let alone been allowed near one. "I'm sorry, could you clarify what kind of help you're referring to?" Thane reached into his diplomatic pouch and produced a data pad. 3 of our frontier worlds have become isolated due to recent territorial conflicts with neighboring species. The colonies on Krallen Prime, Dust Valley, and Iron Ridge are cut off from our main educational centers. Our young are growing up without proper schooling or cultural instruction. He activated the datapad, showing holographic images of the 3 worlds. Each was harsh and barren, typical of Vorthik preferences, but clearly struggling with limited resources. "We have tried to establish remote learning programs, but the communication delays are too great. We have attempted to send teachers from the homeworld, but they are needed elsewhere to deal with the ongoing conflicts." Thane's voice carried a note of frustration that Marcus had never heard from any Vorthik before. These young Vorthik are falling behind in their development. Without proper education, they cannot take their place in our society. Without cultural instruction, they lose connection to our heritage. This is unacceptable. Marcus nodded slowly, understanding the problem, but not yet seeing where humanity fit into the solution. This is indeed a serious situation, Ambassador. But I'm not sure how humans can help with Vorthik education. Our species have very different learning styles and cultural values. Thane's eyes fixed on Marcus with an intensity that made him fight the urge to step back. That is where you are wrong, Ambassador Reed. We have been studying your species for over 2 years now. We have analyzed your behavior patterns, your history, and your interactions with other galactic civilizations. The Vorthik ambassador stood and began pacing, his movements controlled but clearly agitated. Do you know what we discovered? Your species does something that no other predator species in the galaxy does. You protect and nurture the young of other species, even when those species are your enemies. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The idea that the Vorthik had been secretly studying humanity was disturbing enough, but their conclusion was even more unsettling because he knew it was true. We have records, Thane continued, of human rescue teams who died saving Zephyrian hatchlings during the Crystal Wars. We know of human medics who treated injured thornback cubs despite the risk of retaliation. We have documented cases of humans volunteering to work in the nurseries of species that consider such contact an act of war. Thane stopped pacing and turned to face Marcus directly. This behavior makes no sense from a survival perspective. It provides no genetic advantage. It offers no strategic benefit. Yet humans do it consistently, across all situations and circumstances. Marcus felt the weight of the conversation settling on his shoulders. You want humans to establish schools. For young Vorthik, yes. The single word carried the force of an imperial decree. We want humans to run educational facilities on all 3 frontier worlds. You will have complete authority over curriculum and teaching methods. You will be responsible for the safety, education, and cultural development of young Vorthik. The magnitude of what Thane was proposing hit Marcus like a physical blow. The Vorthik were asking humans to take responsibility for their most precious and protected resource, their children. It was a level of trust that no species had ever shown another. Ambassador Bloodclaw, I'm honored by your confidence in humanity. But this is an enormous responsibility. Vorthik young are very different from human children. They have different needs, different instincts, different ways of learning. Thane's expression softened slightly, showing something that might have been understanding. We know this will not be easy. Vorthik young are aggressive by nature. They settle disputes through combat. They view weakness as something to be eliminated. Many in my government believe you will fail within days. And what do you believe? Thane was quiet for a long moment, considering his words carefully. I believe that any species willing to die for the children of their enemies can be trusted with the children of their friends. Marcus realized that this moment would change everything. Not just for the humans who would take on this assignment, but for the relationship between humanity and the galaxy's predator species. The Vorthik were offering something unprecedented, complete trust. I'll need to consult with Earth Command and assemble a team of specialists. Thane nodded. Time is important, but we understand that proper preparation is necessary. We will provide all resources needed and full diplomatic protection for your people. As the meeting concluded and Thane prepared to leave, Marcus felt the full weight of what lay ahead. Humanity was about to undertake its most challenging and important mission yet, proving worthy of the trust that even predators placed in them. On the distant world of Vorthik Prime, in a heavily guarded research facility buried deep beneath the capital city, Kane Ironmaw sat surrounded by thousands of files and data screens. For the past 2 years, he had been conducting the most secret project in Vorthak history, studying human behavior patterns across the galaxy. Kane was different from most Vorthak. While his people valued strength and direct action, he possessed a scientist's mind. He loved to analyze, to understand, to find patterns where others saw only chaos. This unusual trait had made him both valuable and suspect. Among his own kind, the assignment had come from the High Council itself. They wanted to understand why humans were becoming increasingly influential in galactic politics, despite being a relatively new species with no significant military power. What made other species trust them? What gave them their diplomatic advantages? Kane had expected to find evidence of cunning manipulation or hidden military strength. Instead, he discovered something far more puzzling and profound. His first breakthrough came while analyzing incident reports from the Crystal Wars, a conflict that had ended 3 years before humans even achieved faster-than-light travel. During the final battle on Zephyr 7, a human rescue ship had arrived in the middle of active combat. The ship's crew had ignored both sides of the fighting and focused entirely on evacuating Zephyrian hatchlings from a nursery facility caught in the crossfire. What made this remarkable was that the Zephyrians had been attacking human colonies for months. Humans had every reason to hate them. Yet when they found Zephyrian children in danger, they risked their lives to save them. 3 humans died in that rescue mission, including the ship's captain. Kane had initially dismissed this as an isolated incident, perhaps a military strategy to gain favor with the Zephyrians. But as he dug deeper, he found similar patterns everywhere. During the Thornback Rebellion, human medical teams had crossed active war zones to treat injured Thornback cubs. The adult Thornbacks considered any alien contact with their young to be a serious crime, punishable by death. The humans knew this. They went anyway. When the Hive Collective's nursery ships were damaged by space pirates, human volunteers had worked around the clock to repair the life support systems. The Hive species were known to consume any alien that entered their nursery areas, viewing them as threats to their young. The humans understood the risk. They volunteered anyway. The pattern was consistent across dozens of conflicts, hundreds of incidents, and countless individual acts. Humans repeatedly risked their lives, their resources, and their diplomatic relationships to protect the children of other species. Kane expanded his research to include human behavior on their home world. What he found there was even more interesting. Humans regularly adopted and raised the young of other Earth species, creatures they called pets. They spent enormous amounts of resources caring for animals that provided no practical benefit. They rescued wild animals from danger, often risking injury to themselves. The behavior extended beyond Earth animals. In human space, there were facilities dedicated to caring for rescued alien creatures. Humans had established sanctuaries for dozens of species, many of which were dangerous or expensive to maintain. They asked for nothing in return. Kane's research team, working in secret, had identified what they called the human protection instinct. It seemed to activate whenever humans encountered young or vulnerable beings, regardless of species. The instinct was so strong that it often overrode logical thinking, personal safety, and even species loyalty. Dr. Vale Sharpfang, Kane's research partner, had a different theory. She believed the behavior was learned, a result of human culture and education. To test this, they studied humans who had grown up in isolation or in societies that emphasized survival over cooperation. The results surprised them both. Even humans raised in harsh conditions, trained as soldiers, or taught to distrust aliens showed the same protective instincts when confronted with young creatures in distress. The behavior appeared to be biological rather than cultural. Kane's most revealing discovery came from studying human brain scans during encounters with alien children. The humans showed activation in the same neural pathways that activated when they saw their own species young. Their brains literally treated all children as if they were human children deserving of protection. This was unprecedented in galactic biology. Most species showed protective instincts only toward their own kind. Some showed limited care for closely related species. But humans seem to have evolved a universal parental instinct that applied to any creature displaying characteristics of youth and vulnerability. The research team conducted careful experiments to test their theories. They observed human reactions to images, videos, and even live encounters with various alien species young. The results were consistent every time. Humans showed immediate protective responses, increased stress when the young were in danger, and satisfaction when they could provide help or care. Kane documented cases that proved how deep this instinct ran. Human parents had adopted alien children whose own species had abandoned them. Human teachers worked in schools for species whose adults barely tolerated human presence. Human rescue workers had developed specialized equipment just to save alien young from natural disasters. The most striking example in Kane's files involved a human colony ship that had discovered a derelict vessel containing the hibernating larvae of the razor wing species. The razor wings were notorious pirates who had raided human settlements for decades. The logical response would have been to destroy the vessel or leave it to drift in space. Instead, the humans had spent 2 months and most of their emergency supplies nursing the larvae back to health. They had studied razor wing biology to provide proper care. They had even learned razor wing cultural practices to ensure the larvae would be accepted back into their society. When they finally delivered the healthy larvae to a razor wing outpost, the pirates had been so shocked by this unprecedented act of mercy toward their young that they had declared the human colony under their permanent protection. Kane's final report contained over 10,000 documented incidents of humans protecting, caring for, or risking themselves for alien young. The pattern held across all human cultures, all time periods since they had entered galactic society, and all types of alien species. The conclusion was inescapable. Humans possessed a unique biological trait that made them naturally trustworthy guardians for any species' children. This trait was not learned, not cultural, and not strategic. It was simply part of what made humans human. When Kane presented his findings to the High Council, the reaction was immediate and profound. For the first time in Vorthek history, the Council voted unanimously on a major decision. If humans could be trusted with the children of their enemies, they could certainly be trusted with the children of their allies. The decision to approach humanity about educating young Vorthek was based on 2 years of careful research and thousands of documented examples. Kane's work had revealed something that even humans themselves might not fully understand about their own nature. As Kane sealed his research files and prepared them for the permanent archives, he reflected on what this discovery meant for the galaxy. If humans were natural protectors of all young life, their role in galactic society might be far more important than anyone had realized. The Vorthek were about to test that theory with their most precious possessions, their children. The transport ship landed on Krellin Prime with a gentle thud that echoed across the barren landscape. Marcus Reed stepped out first, followed by his 3-person team. The dry heat hit them immediately, and the twin suns cast harsh shadows across the rocky terrain. This would be their home for the next year. Tom Wells adjusted his equipment pack and surveyed the settlement ahead. A former military instructor from Earth's Special Forces, he had trained soldiers in harsh environments before, but never anything like this. The idea of teaching young predators who could kill him with their bare claws was both terrifying and exciting. Lisa Park checked her portable research station, making sure the delicate equipment had survived the journey. As a child psychologist, she had worked with difficult cases before, but all of her experience involved human children. She wondered if her training would apply to a species that solved conflicts through combat. David Cole was busy taking readings of the local environment with his instruments. A xenobiology specialist, he understood alien physiology better than most humans. But the Vorthak were still largely a mystery. Most of what science knew about them came from long-range observations and battlefield encounters. The Vorthak settlement of New Fang was typical of their frontier colonies. Low, sturdy buildings built from local stone, designed to withstand the planet's frequent dust storms. No decorations or unnecessary features. Everything built for function and survival. The streets were wide enough for large Vorthak to move comfortably, but felt empty and unwelcoming to human eyes. A group of adult Vorthak waited near the landing pad. Their leader, a massive female named Captain Scar Drakemaw, approached the humans with obvious reluctance. Her dark green scales bore the ritual scars that marked her as a veteran warrior, and her yellow eyes showed clear suspicion. "I am Captain Drakemaw. I command the settlement." Her voice was rough and direct. "I do not understand why the High Council has made this decision, but I will follow orders. Your building is ready. The young ones will arrive tomorrow." She gestured toward a large structure at the edge of the settlement. It had been hastily converted from a storage facility, with new windows and doors added to accommodate the human teachers. The walls were thick enough to contain whatever might happen inside. "How many students should we expect?" Marcus asked. 18 young ones, aged between 6 and 12 of your years. They have been living without proper schooling for 8 months. They are difficult. Captain Drakemaw's expression suggested that difficult was a significant understatement. That evening, the human team gathered in their new quarters to review everything they knew about young Vorthak development. The information was limited, mostly gathered from Kane Ironmaw's research and a few diplomatic exchanges. Young Vorthak were naturally aggressive and competitive. They established social hierarchy through physical contests. They had razor-sharp claws that could cut through most materials. Their play often involved genuine combat that would seriously injure most other species. They respected strength above all else and viewed weakness as something to be eliminated. "We need to understand that their aggression isn't malicious," David explained, reading from his notes. "It's how they learn social structure and survival skills. Fighting is their natural way of solving problems and establishing relationships." Lisa nodded thoughtfully. "The key will be channeling that aggression into positive activities. We can't suppress their nature, but we can guide it." Tom was studying the building layout. "We'll need to reinforce some areas and create safe zones. If they're going to fight, we need to control where and how it happens." The next morning, the young Vorthak arrived in a group, escorted by 2 adult guards. Marcus got his first look at the students who would test everything humanity claimed to understand about caring for alien children. Even as children, the Vorthak were impressive. The youngest stood about 4 feet tall, while the oldest were nearly 6 feet. Their scales were lighter than adults, showing they were still growing, but their claws were already sharp and dangerous. They moved with the fluid grace of natural predators, constantly alert and ready for action. The largest of the group, a 10-year-old named Raven Swiftclaw, immediately challenged the human's authority. He approached Tom directly, claws extended, and spoke in the harsh Vorthak language. David's translator device provided the meaning. "You are weak prey. Why should we obey you?" Tom stood his ground, meeting Raven's gaze without backing down. He had faced hostile situations before and knew that showing fear would be fatal to their mission. "Because we are here to help you become stronger." Raven tilted his head, clearly surprised by the response. Most species either retreated from Vorthak aggression or responded with their own threats. Tom's calm confidence was something new. Lisa stepped forward with her psychological training guiding her approach. "We know you are strong fighters. We want to teach you to be strong thinkers too." The young Vorthek exchanged glances, communicating in their own language. David's translator caught fragments, words like strange, different, and interesting. The first day was chaos. The young Vorthek tested every boundary the humans tried to establish. They fought among themselves constantly, destroyed furniture that wasn't built to Vorthek standards, and completely ignored most attempts at traditional teaching methods. Tom quickly realized that standard classroom techniques wouldn't work. Instead, he drew on his military background to create structured combat exercises. If the young Vorthek needed to fight, he would give them something worth fighting for. He divided them into teams and created competitive challenges that required both physical skill and mental strategy. The students had to work together to solve problems, with the winning team earning privileges and recognition. Lisa focused on understanding their emotional needs beneath the aggressive exterior. She observed their interactions carefully, noting how they comforted each other after defeats and celebrated victories as a group. Despite their fierce nature, they were still children who needed guidance and support. David worked on adapting human teaching materials to Vorthek learning styles. He discovered that they responded well to visual demonstrations and hands-on activities. Abstract concepts needed to be connected to practical applications they could understand. The breakthrough came during the second week. Young Raven Swiftclaw was engaged in a particularly intense territorial display, trying to claim the best position in the classroom. He leaped onto a desk that hadn't been properly reinforced, and the furniture collapsed under his weight. His left arm caught on a sharp edge, opening a deep gash that bled green Vorthek blood. The reaction was immediate and telling. The other young Vorthek froze, unsure how to respond. In their society, showing concern for an injured competitor could be seen as weakness. But they were clearly worried about their packmate. Tom moved without hesitation. He knelt beside Raven, applying pressure to the wound while speaking in calm, reassuring tones. Lisa grabbed the first aid kit, her hands steady despite the sight of alien blood. David activated the emergency medical scanner to assess the injury severity. The young Vorthek watched in amazement. These strange, soft aliens were treating their packmate with the same protective care that Vorthek parents showed their own cubs. There was no hesitation, no fear, no concern for their own safety. As Tom cleaned and bandaged the wound, Raven stared at him with new understanding. "Why do you help me? I challenged your authority. I called you weak." Tom met his eyes directly. "Because you are hurt, and you are under our protection. That's what teachers do." The simple honesty of the answer seemed to shock the young Vorthek more than any display of strength could have. They began to understand that these humans operated by different rules that prioritized care over dominance, protection over competition. From that moment, the dynamic in the classroom changed completely. The young Vorthek still competed and fought, but they began to listen when the humans spoke. They started to see their teachers not as weak prey species, but as a different kind of strength entirely. 3 months after the school opened on Krallen Prime, news of the human success began to spread through the galactic communication networks. Trade ships carried stories from one system to another. Diplomatic channels buzzed with reports that seemed too strange to believe. The fierce Vorthek, who had never allowed aliens near their children, were not only accepting human teachers but praising their work. On the trading post of Nexus Station, Captain Blade Huntclaw of the Korath Syndicate was having drinks with fellow traders when the conversation turned to recent galactic news. The Korath were hunter traders, a species that valued strength and cunning above all else. They had built their civilization on the principle that only the strong deserved to survive. "The stories can't be true," growled Captain Fang Bloodseeker, another Korath trader. "The Vorthek would never trust aliens with their young. It goes against everything they believe." Blade leaned back in his chair, his scaled features thoughtful. "But what if it is true? What does that tell us about these humans? The question haunted Blade for days as he conducted his trading runs through the outer systems. If the notoriously protective Vorthek trusted humans with their children, there had to be a reason. Something about human nature that even the galaxy's apex predators recognized and respected. Blade made a decision that would have shocked his fellow Korath. He diverted his ship to Krallen Prime to see for himself what was happening at the human run school. Meanwhile, on Krallen Prime, the transformation of the young Vorthek was becoming more remarkable each day. The humans had not tried to suppress their students' predatory nature. Instead, they had learned to work with it. Tom had developed a unique teaching system that turned every lesson into a competition. Mathematics became strategic planning exercises where students had to calculate resource allocation for hunting expeditions. History lessons focused on famous battles and the tactical decisions that led to victory or defeat. Even literature was taught through epic poems about warrior heroes. The young Vorthek thrived under this approach. They competed fiercely to solve problems faster and more efficiently than their classmates. Their natural aggression was channeled into academic achievement rather than destructive fighting. Lisa's psychological insights had proved equally valuable. She discovered that beneath their fierce exterior, young Vorthek craved the same things. As human children, recognition, belonging, and the security of knowing someone cared about their well-being. The difference was in how these needs were expressed and fulfilled. When young Storm Ironhide struggled with reading comprehension, Lisa didn't simply provide extra help. She reframed the difficulty as a challenge to overcome through strength and determination. Storm began staying after class voluntarily, viewing reading improvement as a form of combat training for the mind. David's xenobiology expertise had helped him understand the physical aspects of Vorthek development. He learned that their aggressive play wasn't just social behavior. It was necessary for proper muscle and bone development. He worked with Tom to create supervised combat exercises that fulfilled this biological need while teaching important lessons about strategy and teamwork. The results were impressive. The young Vorthek were not only receiving excellent education, but were also developing skills that traditional Vorthek schooling had never emphasized. They were learning to think before acting, to consider multiple solutions to problems, and to work cooperatively when the situation demanded it. More importantly, they were learning that strength came in many forms. Physical power was still important, but intellectual strength, emotional resilience, and the ability to protect others were equally valuable. When Captain Blade arrived on Krallen Prime, he expected to find either a disaster or evidence of human deception. Instead, he witnessed something that challenged everything he thought he knew about education and child development. He watched young Vorthek working together to solve complex engineering problems, their natural competitiveness driving them to achieve better results. He saw them engaged in supervised combat training that was both physically demanding and intellectually challenging. Most surprising of all, he observed their genuine affection and respect for their human teachers. The turning point came when Blade witnessed an incident that would be talked about throughout Korath space for years to come. A group of raiders had detected the isolated settlement and decided it would be an easy target. They were criminals and outcasts from various species, equipped with stolen military weapons and driven by greed. The attack came at night when most of the settlement was asleep. The raiders had done their research. They knew about the human school, but assumed that soft-skinned aliens would be helpless in a real fight. They planned to loot the settlement and possibly capture some humans to sell as slaves in the outer systems. They had not counted on the young Vorthek. The attack alarm woke everyone in the settlement, including the students in the school dormitory. While the adult Vorthek organized their defense, the young ones faced a choice. They could hide in the reinforced safe room as they had been taught, or they could fight to protect their new home and teachers. The decision was unanimous. 18. Young Vorthek, led by Raven Swiftclaw, armed themselves with training weapons and took positions around the school building. They were not going to let anyone harm their teachers. The raiders who tried to break into the school found themselves facing opponents they had not expected. These were not helpless children. They were young predators trained in both traditional combat and human tactical thinking. They fought with the ferocity of their species, but also with the strategic planning their human teachers had taught them. Tom, Lisa, and David found themselves fighting alongside their students, using improvised weapons and defensive positions. The humans showed no hesitation about risking their lives to protect the young Vorthek, just as the students were risking theirs to protect their teachers. Captain Blade, who had been staying in the settlement's guest quarters, joined the defense with his own weapons. As a Korath hunter, he was impressed by the young Vorthek's fighting skills, but he was amazed by something else entirely: the complete trust and cooperation between the human teachers and their alien students. The battle was brief but intense. The raiders had expected easy targets and found themselves outmatched by a coordinated defense that combined Vorthek ferocity with human tactics. Most fled when they realized they were facing organized resistance. Those who stayed to fight were quickly overwhelmed. In the aftermath, as the settlement treated wounds and assessed damage, Blade watched the humans tend to their injured students with the same care they had shown throughout their time on Krallen Prime. There was no hesitation, no concern for their own safety, only an immediate focus on making sure the young Vorthek were safe and healthy. He also watched the young Vorthek's response to their teacher's care. These fierce young predators, who had just proven themselves in combat, accepted human assistance with complete trust. They had learned that accepting help was not weakness. It was part of being part of a pack that cared for all its members. Captain Blade left Krallen Prime with a new understanding of what made humans unique in the galaxy. They were not the strongest species, or the smartest, or the most advanced, but they possessed something that even the galaxy's apex predators recognized and valued: an unshakable commitment to protecting those under their care. Within weeks, observers from a dozen predator species were requesting permission to visit the human schools. The Korath Syndicate began formal negotiations with Earth Command about establishing similar programs for their own young. Other species that had never shown interest in human culture suddenly wanted to understand what made them such effective guardians. The ripple effect had begun, spreading through galactic society one species at a time, carrying a simple but profound message. When it came to protecting children, humans could be trusted completely. 6 months after the first human school opened on Krallen Prime, representatives from across the galaxy gathered at the Galactic Council Station Harmony for an event that had never happened before: the first Interspecies Educational Summit. The massive conference hall buzzed with dozens of different languages as delegates from 43 species took their seats. Ambassador Thane Bloodclaw stood at the central podium, his imposing figure commanding attention from every being in the room. Around him sat representatives from the galaxy's most feared predator species: Korath hunters with their battle-scarred hides, razor-wing avians with their sharp beaks and piercing eyes, deep tunnel burrowers with their massive claws, and many others who had never before shown interest in educational cooperation. Marcus Reed sat in the human delegation section, still amazed by the path that had led to this moment. What had started as a desperate request from the Vorthek had become something much larger, a fundamental shift in how the galaxy viewed humanity's role in interstellar society. "Fellow delegates," Thane began, his deep voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems, "we gather here because the Vorthek Empire has discovered something that changes our understanding of galactic civilization." He activated a holographic display showing images from the 3 human-run schools now operating on Vorthek frontier worlds. The audience watched young Vorthek engaged in complex learning activities, working alongside their human teachers with obvious trust and affection. "For thousands of years, my people believed that strength was the only virtue worth respecting. We measured worth by the ability to dominate, to conquer, to survive through force alone. Thane's expression showed something that few had ever seen from a Vorthek: humility. This belief led us to view other species as either threats to be destroyed or prey to be consumed. The idea of cooperation seemed like weakness. The concept of trust was foreign to our nature. The hologram shifted to show statistical data comparing the educational progress of young Vorthek in human schools versus traditional Vorthek institutions. The results were startling. Students taught by humans were excelling in every measured category. But these humans showed us something we had never seen before. They demonstrated a form of strength that our philosophy could not explain. When faced with our most aggressive young, they did not retreat or attack. They protected and guided. Captain Blade Huntclaw rose from his seat in the Korath delegation. Ambassador Bloodclaw speaks truth. I witnessed the raid on Kralin Prime. I saw human teachers risk their lives to protect Vorthek young, and I saw those same young risk their lives to protect their teachers. This is not weakness. This is strength of a kind we have never understood. Murmurs rippled through the assembly as other delegates shared their own observations. The Razor Wing Avians had sent scouts to observe the human schools. The deep tunnel. Borrowers had analyzed human behavior patterns. The Stone Spine Crushers had studied human psychology. All had reached similar conclusions. Elder Claw Deathwing of the Avian clan stood next. My people have been watching these humans for months. We have seen them adapt their teaching methods to work with young of species completely alien to their own biology. They learn our customs, respect our traditions, and somehow find ways to nurture our young while honoring what makes each species unique. The holographic display now showed footage from multiple worlds where human teachers were working with different species. Each program was uniquely adapted to the needs of its students, yet all shared the same fundamental approach. Humans treating alien children with the same care and protection they would show their own young. Dr. Kane Ironmaw, the Vorthek researcher, whose work had started this entire process, was invited to present his findings to the assembly. His research had expanded far beyond the original study, now encompassing behavioral data from dozens of species across hundreds of worlds. The evidence is overwhelming, Kane explained, his scientific precision cutting through the emotional atmosphere. Humans possess a biological trait that makes them uniquely suited to caring for the young of any species. This trait overrides their survival instincts, their species loyalty, and their personal interests. He displayed brain scan data showing human neural responses to alien children in distress. When humans encounter young beings in need, their brains activate the same protective pathways that respond to their own offspring. This is not learned behavior. It is hardwired into their evolutionary biology. The implications were staggering. If humans were naturally programmed to protect all young life, regardless of species, they represented something unprecedented in galactic civilization, a species that could be trusted completely with the most precious possessions of any other species. Ambassador Frost Sharptooth of the Iceworld Stalkers spoke next. My people have been contacted by human representatives offering to establish schools on our frozen worlds. Our young face harsh conditions that have made traditional education difficult. If humans can adapt to our environment and teach our young to survive while also learning advanced concepts, we would be interested in such an arrangement. Similar statements came from delegate after delegate. Species that had never trusted outsiders were now actively seeking human involvement in their children's education. The pattern was clear. Once a species understood what humans offered, they wanted to be part of the program. The summit continued for 3 days, with detailed discussions about implementation, resource allocation, and cultural adaptation. By the end, formal agreements had been signed establishing human educational programs on over 20 worlds. Representing 15 different species, Marcus found himself appointed as the first director of the newly created Human Educational Corps, a branch of Earth's diplomatic service dedicated entirely to interstellar education. The Corps would recruit and train teachers specifically for alien environments, develop species-specific teaching materials, and coordinate with galactic governments to ensure the programs met each species' unique needs. On the final day of the summit, Thane Bloodclaw made a closing statement that would be remembered throughout galactic history. "We came here believing we were discussing education," he said, his voice carrying the weight of profound realization. "Instead, we have discovered humanity's true purpose in our galactic community. They are not conquerors or traitors or even diplomats, though they excel at all these roles. They are something far more important. They are the guardians of our future." The chamber fell silent as the full meaning of his words settled over the assembled delegates. Every species in this room has struggled with the same challenge: how to prepare our young for an uncertain future, while preserving what makes us unique. Humans have shown us that this challenge can be met through cooperation rather than competition, through protection rather than domination. Thane's gaze swept across the assembly, meeting the eyes of representatives from species that had been enemies for generations. "Perhaps it is time we stopped viewing the galaxy as a collection of competing predators and started seeing it as a community of species working together to ensure all our children have the chance to thrive." The summit ended with the signing of the Galactic Education Accords, a document that established humans as the official guardians of interstellar education. More importantly, it marked the beginning of a new era in galactic relations, one based on trust, cooperation, and the shared commitment to protecting and nurturing the young of all species. As the delegates departed to return to their home worlds, each carried with them the same message. In a galaxy full of dangers and uncertainties, there was one species that could be trusted absolutely with the most precious thing any civilization possessed: its children. The Human Educational Corps would go on to establish schools on over 200 worlds, teaching millions of alien children while learning from their cultures and traditions. But the real achievement was not educational. It was the transformation of galactic society from a collection of suspicious, competing species into a true community united by their shared commitment to nurturing the next generation. Humanity had found its calling among the stars, not as conquerors or explorers, but as the universal guardians of hope and possibility, the teachers who would help shape the future of galactic civilization.